Hello, everyone. We'll get started at 6 in just like 2 minutes. Yes, my chicory or checado behind me. Yes. Sometimes people call it the original virtual background. If you took Intro to East Asian, or it's not called Intro, it's called Visual Arts of East Asia, you'll learn about this painting behind me, this genre of painting behind me. All right, I have 6 o'clock here. Let me start my timer. So welcome everyone. Let me share my screen. Can you see the PowerPoint? Slash, are you seeing? Not just can, but are you seeing? Good.
Yes.
Thank you, Tyler. Okay. No, why is it doing this? So we are in week 2, and it is January 24th, and we're going to be talking about art in North Korea today. You should have already been, most of you, I can tell, have already done all the readings and everything, which is exactly what you're supposed to do. So just to start off, are there any questions about the assignments that so far from here on out? It's going to be basically the same thing. I guess today we're adding the plenary response. But otherwise, the blogs are really the main thing before class, and then, after class you'll have some kinds of assignments. But um, are there any questions?
Um, yeah, I did have one.
Yes.
I saw that the information for like the rest of the weeks are already up. What are your I guess opinions on like if we worked ahead with some of our blog posts and stuff? Do you prefer we don't or we do or
I have no preference. That's up to you. The blogs are always based on the readings and the videos, so you never really have to, as long as you've done those, you'll be able to do the blog. The after class assignments you won't be able to do because
right?
I I actually make up I changed every semester. The lecture is a little bit different what we talk about, so I make the plenary response a little bit different, but yeah, you're welcome to work at whatever pace you want if it's faster. Um,
Okay.
yeah, if you want to go faster, you can go faster. So, so Callie asks for the blogs, do we respond to 2 people or everyone? So you just have to pick 2 people and respond to them. Responding to everyone in the class would be crazy. I think there's 24 of you, or 25 maybe. So yeah, just pick 2 people. And respond thoughtfully to their blog. I did have a question, like, should you respond, or should your response or comment to your peers' blogs, should it be about their whole post? Like, for example, this week, should you respond to them talking about their Kim Il-sung statue, and their discussion question, just their discussion question? It's up to you, what you would like to do. I tend to tell students that if they leave a discussion question, it interests you, then you can make your comment about that at least. But the comments aren't really graded on oh, I don't have the rubric to bring up, but the comments are just graded on, did you respond to specifically what they put in their original post? So that can be what they said about their Kim Il-sung statue, or that can be about their discussion question. It's just to avoid, like, not saying like, I like your response, and then that's all you say, or I agree with you, and that's all you say, right? So there has to be some depth to what you say, at least a little bit of depth. The other thing I'll say is, and I think everyone picked up on this, but so remember, from here on out, your first blog response, so your post to the prompt, your response to the prompt, is due Tuesday night, and then your comments to just two people are due by 5 o'clock on Wednesdays. So don't forget that it's not everything's due at 5 o'clock on Wednesday, but there's the two parts to it. So, any more questions? Okay, I think we will move on. So the extra credit date. Thank you to everyone who responded. So the date that works for most people. So I have to pick what works for most. I'm sorry if you're not you're someone who's in the minority. Among the people who responded, it said like 90% of people could do this time. So I'm sorry if you're not within that 90%, but this is the best thing that I can do. So the date is going to be Thursday, March 7th from 12:30 to 1:30 p.m. at the Spencer Museum of Art for the extra credit. Now, remember, you are welcome on, under the course info module, the extra credit information. If you're not going to attend the live session with me, is on there. You're welcome to go on your own time. The difference is you have to submit a written portion to me, because I have to know that you were thinking about what we're going to be talking about at the extra credit session. Okay. Are there any questions about this? Thank you. Yes, thank you for your no's. No is also fine. I appreciate the no's. Okay. So let's start talking about North Korea. So here's our attendance question today. So what are the stereotypes about North Korea? What were some, when you watched Professor David Kong's lecture, what were some of the stereotypes that he talked about? Or stereotypes, maybe not even ones that he talked about, but ones that you personally knew about or had heard before, or maybe, myself included, maybe you thought them as well. None of us are invincible to stereotyping. Some of us do it and we don't realize that we do it. Yes, Tyler. North Koreans are mindless. Yes, they're starving. They don't think for themselves. Yes, Daphne, brainwashed. Exactly. Alpha. Yes, they're very behind, right? They're not developed at all. Fatima, they're blindly following. Yeah, blindly following Kim Il-sung. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, robotic, Claire. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, they're often seen as robots. Maricela, yeah, completely cut off, like they're completely isolated. Hunter brainwashed, Kyle brainwashed. Callie, yeah, very important here. Government-focused culture. Yeah, exactly. So everything in North Korea is supposed to be really coming from the government downward, right? Exactly. Let's see. Hope. Yes, mindless drones. Yeah, he says that very specifically, right? Yeah, good, Ian. They have no knowledge. They don't know. They don't know about their situation. That's a stereotype about them. Yeah, exactly. Maddie, yes, thank you. Militarized. Yes, that's very important, right? So North Korea and North Korean people are everything's about the military, right? Um, Hate it. Our Gus says, yeah, brainwashed and ignorant to the outside world, right? Cade, uneducated. Yeah, that's part of it too, right? They're behind in education. Elsa, yes. Mindless, brainwashed. Not, yeah, exactly. They're not normal people just living their lives. There's something opposing to that concept with North Korean people. Truman, robots, yes. Miranda, dark place, figuratively dark place. Yes, it's very dark. Like they are, um, like a lot of the stuff that's happening is very shady, and it's just, there's no positivity there whatsoever. Yes, Cameron. Yeah, very against America, anti-USA, yeah, for sure. So they don't wear jeans and stuff like that. Yeah. I've never heard specifically that they don't wear jeans, but I'm sure that's out there somewhere, yeah. Yeah, pitiable, as Ryan says. There's no joy. Yeah, exactly. There's no joy. They're very pitiable. Yeah, we should pity them, right? Mitchell, they're impoverished for sure. And Jimin, finally, let's see. Yeah, seen as less than human. Yeah, exactly. So there's kind of these two kinds of stereotypes that are going on, and most of us focused on these ones in our answers, which is stereotypes about North Korean people. And yeah, there are all of these things, right? According to the stereotypes that we have. Um, Poor, sad, oppressed, brainwashed, enslaved, violent, absurdly patriotic, like that kind of thing. But then we have also the stereotypes that's about the government itself, right? And it's destitute, violent, threatening, insane, kind of surveillance state. It's enslaver, like enslaving, right? So there's kind of these two almost like opposing, these kind of two stereotypes about one place shouldn't really exist, right? So one of them is like, oh, they need a lot of help, and the other one is like they're dangerous, don't go near them, right? So it's kind of like these two kind of dissonant stereotypes, but they're both very much in the discourse about North Korea. But then what's the reality that David Kong talks about? What are some things that he said that maybe stuck with you about people in North Korea? Exactly. Yeah. Yes, Hunter. Just like they're just trying to get through life like all of us. Yeah, Alpha. Yeah, they're very family oriented. Yes, of course. Family and friends oriented, both, just like everyone is, right? Yeah, exactly, Claire. They didn't choose to be born in North Korea, right? Yeah, and we're going to talk about some of the specifics here in just a moment, but yeah, they actually have a rising consumer culture, right? And they've had one for quite a while, actually. Marticela, yeah, that's just the basic thing is actually they're just like us, right? Um, like what Maddie says here, people do not always reflect the government, right? In the US, we would never think of individuals as reflections necessarily of the government. I mean, on occasion we might. There are certain particular cases that we might, but not generally speaking, right? Yeah, exactly. I mean, it seems kind of cliche, but like Cameron says, they're human, just like everyone else. Um, and yeah, they joke around, like Elsa says. They find humor in life. Exactly. There is a middle class. We're going to talk about them in just a moment. Yeah, exactly. There's kind of an in between, right? Yeah, people being people, Kyle says. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to read through everything. Yes, Jimmy, and there are these kind of secret channels for them to get stuff that they need, right? So, like most of us seem to understand, it's really important to distinguish when you're talking about North Korea, the people and the government, right? They're kind of like two sides of North Korea that they're very different from one another. And there are these stereotypes that don't carry through. Exactly. So let's talk about class in North Korea. So this is going to be a little bit of a lecture. I'll be going between like lecturing and then like we'll do some discussions. So bear with me here. So despite the stereotype that all people in North Korea are poor and the fact that North Korea believes itself to be a socialist paradise, there is a hierarchy of class wealth in North Korea. So at the top are the Kim family, and below them are members of the People's Working Party. Or I'm sorry, the Workers Party is what it should say. Sorry. And they're the single party that controls the North Korean government, right? So North Korean government is a single party system, which is why people call it a dictatorship. And it's called the Workers Party. So these members, they may be like government or military officials. But then the class that's next is called the Tonju. So Tonju just means money masters, and they are a capitalist class, and they're particularly in Pyongyang. So has anyone seen the Netflix K-drama called Crash Landing on You? It wasn't originally a Netflix drama. Have you seen Crash Landing on You? I'm trying to remember what the Korean name is. Maybe you've seen it. It was popular a couple years ago. Yeah, I would consider checking it out. So if you watch it, even though it's fiction, it pretty accurately portrays the lifestyle of these elites in Pyongyang. So most Tonju derive their wealth from international trade, and many own department stores in Pyongyang. And they have access to designer brand fashion and global name brand products, like this woman's handbag, if you notice, and her bottle of iced tea. I think it's a Lipton brand iced tea, but I'm not quite sure, but it kind of looks like that branding. So under the Tonju and the members of the party are like a quasi middle class, and they mostly inhabit Pyongyang, but they may be in other developed cities in North Korea as well. They primarily do blue collar jobs like nursing, construction, teaching, that kind of a thing. And then at the bottom of the hierarchy of people are those who live outside of Pyongyang, particularly in the rural areas of North Korea. They're mostly farmers, and their primary way of survival is through something called jangmadang, or market yards, which is what's depicted in this photograph here. So in your readings, they didn't talk about this. This is kind of a newer thing people starting to talk about. They've been around a while. So they're kind of like flea markets, except they mostly barter instead of using currency. And they primarily trade agricultural products and also black market imports, typically that come through China. But these imports are not like the luxury items that Tonju have. These are like the necessary clothing, hygiene products, packaged food, stuff like that that they're getting. So the chairman of the Workers' Party of Korea, originally it was this guy, right? Kim Il-sung. And then, so Kim Il-sung is not, this is their official title, is they are the great leader, the beloved leader. But the point of them is that they're the chairman of the party. And he died in 94, and after him came Kim Jong-il, and then he died in 2011, and now we are up to today, which is Kim Jong-un. And Kim Jong-il is the son of Kim Il-sung, and Kim Jong-un is the son of Kim Jong-il. So, how would you describe this system of leadership? What's kind of going on with that? Okay, let's see. So monarchy-like, Daphne. Yeah, Daphne says monarchy-like. Yeah, it's kind of like a monarchy, kind of, passing from the king to the prince, and then the prince's son eventually is next in line, right? So it's kind of monarchy, like nepotism. Yeah, it's kind of like nepotism, Tyler. Like, because you're my son, you get to have you get to have some privilege in this system. A lot like a monarchy. Yeah, like a dynastic line. Yes, good, Cameron. Yeah, it's kind of like, so if you're familiar with East Asian pre-modern history, particularly, they have the dynasties, right? Which are just the fancy words for their ruling family or royal family. So they're kind of like a Qing dynasty. Yeah. Let's see what else. Patriarchal, Ryan, very important here. Yeah, it's kind of it's a kind of it is patriarchal, right? It's passing from father to son. Now, some people are actually imagining that it's not, that in the future, the next in line is either going to be Kim Jong-un's sister or Kim Jong-un's daughter. So they actually are kind of maybe waning away from the patriarchy part of it, but we'll see. Yeah, remains in the same family. Let's see, lineage, dynasty. Yeah, exactly. So you can describe it a lot of different ways. I mean, a dictatorship is also, it's kind of like this mixture of all of these things together, right? It's kind of like a dynastic patriarchal dictatorship in a way. So it's kind of unique in modern or in contemporary history, right? And so the state ideology that follows along with the Workers' Party of Korea, and that the Kim's spouse is called Juche, self-reliance. What did you think about this idea? Andrei Lankov talks about it um, a little bit. He mentions it here and there. What do you think? What's kind of going on with this? Okay, yeah. So isolationism, yeah. I'm not sure personally what you mean by Japanese isolationism. You mean like in the early, like the pre-modern period, like the 17th to 19th centuries? I'm not sure what you mean by Japanese
I'm
isolation.
not exactly sure when it was, but there were like
Mm-hmm.
long periods where Japan would just close off trade and close off communication with
Mm-hmm.
other countries because they thought it was better for their culture and economy and development. But it actually put them behind because they weren't trading with anyone else.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a really great point, Tyler. Yeah, so that's like the so think 1600s to really 1850, which is when the US used gunboat diplomacy to open Japan up, right? So you're isolated from the rest of the world. You can't trade with anyone. You can't have any new foreign technologies enter or foreign ideas enter. So you're not in exchange with people, right? Yeah, that's definitely something that's happening with this Juche idea that they spread around. Strong nationalism from Ryan. Yeah, exactly. This very firm belief in North Korea, right? Exactly. North Korea can do it, right? Yes, it's very influential. It's everywhere in their art and in the policy. Thank you, Claire. Yeah, Truman, they're trying to be really independent, trying to be really independent. And they don't want other world powers, right, to have any influence in North Korea. Fatima, yeah, tricking from the inside out. Oh, that's an interesting way to put it. So, like, kind of this idea that they're a strong country, even though they're kind of not at all, right? Hope, wanting autonomy. Yeah, they definitely want their autonomy, right? Cut off from international trade. Oh, good, Cameron. Yeah, legacy of the Hermit Kingdom. So, like Japan, Joseon, so pre-modern. So Korea was also an isolationist state from the 1600s through the late 1800s as well. And that's why it was called the Hermit Kingdom at the time. Yeah. Yeah, self-reliant, avoidance of global trade from Gus. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good. So be independent. Yeah. So sorry if I can't read your comments, but I do kind of gotta. I really love them, and I go through and count them and everything later. But I gotta keep it going. So yeah. I'm really surprised, and I'm actually happy that no one said these two words, which is socialism or communism. So um, although it is related to communism or socialism, it is its own ideology and it's best understood as such. However, has never been given a clear definition. So the closest thing we've ever had is Kim Jong-il stating that it is socialism of our style in 1990. So that was 34 years ago now. Um, in general, like we've all said, it promotes this isolationism, and and extreme nationalism. It's that attitude of we can do it ourselves, right? We don't need anyone else. So in this way, it seems to take inspiration from like Stalinism and Maoism to an extent. And like we were talking about the patriarchal line of leaders, it also indicates that maybe there's some inspiration from Confucian principles as well, right? Um, So why would this be attractive? After thinking about what we talked about last week, why do you think people in North Korea, this might be something that people would be like, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's follow that. What do you think? Some of us kind of are getting towards that here. Yeah, um, we won't get into like all the I'm really interested in the details of communism and Marxism too, but we won't get into all the deep details. But yeah, if you study, if you study Marxism particularly, you'll see that this is not really maybe there's some similarities, but not really. Sorry, the question is here at the bottom of the slides. Thinking about the early 20th century history of Korea, why might this kind of ideology of self-reliance be attractive? So yeah, exactly, Tyler. So they don't Korea, what happened, right? In the early 20th century, they didn't have very good relationships with other countries. They were kind of dominated, right, by Japan, by the US, by the Soviet Union. So you're kind of like Claire says, they kind of want to stay away from these powers, right? Exactly. They've had a lot of recent conflicts and they're interested in, they want to find and get their own identity, right? Every time, like Mitchell says here, every time another nation gets involved, Korea ends up decimated. They don't want the help from outside, right? Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So they're kind of responding, right? Yes, Ryan, you're welcome to make comments verbally. Um, sorry. Yeah, so they're responding to this history, right? But oh yes.
Sorry, I was falling behind because trying to type was slow, but I guess like what I was getting at is like I was thinking about how like the development from like some of like the ideas that Marx proposed on like the revolution style that like Stalin, Mao, and everything. So like they were kind of like pulling from it, but then with the very like counter like US ideas and then the strong sense of nationalism, I thought like all of that together was like, hey, we can do this in
Mm-hmm.
our own way.
Yeah, I think you're right on the spot with that. North Korea was a lot of so it's interesting about North Korea, and we can't get into all this, just in the one day, but North Korea started out very similar to the People's Republic of China under Mao and the Soviet Union under Stalin and then Lenin and so but over time it developed kind of its own because it kept particularly the anti-US kind of an anti-capitalist, quote unquote, attitude. It kind of divulged from them in a lot of ways as well. And you won't hear the word socialism very often at all in official North Korean documents after like the 1970s. And you also won't hear about Marxism, or you won't hear about Marx, and you won't hear a lot about quote unquote uh revolution as much either. It's mostly about they specifically use the term like industrialization and things like that. So you see this kind of shift for sure. So it's kind of its own, it has to be thought of as its own case. So thank you for that, Ryan. All right. So then who is this really about, though? In practice, who does it seem to really be about? Who's really benefiting from this ideology, though? So the state yes, yeah. Who is the state? Yeah, exactly. The Kim family. The Kims are really the main benefactor, but there's other the Tonju a little bit, right? Yeah, but definitely the party, the Kim regime, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, one of the ways they do this is through the use of icons, which we all wrote about, right? So, what's an icon exactly? What is an icon? There's more than one answer to this question. What are some of the different versions or ideas about icons that you see? Okay, good. An important historical figure. Yes, Maddie, that's a great thing to say. So, not even just historical figure, but an important figure, right? Exactly, yeah. Kate, an image that people praise. Absolutely, yeah. That's for sure one of them, especially if you're thinking in a religious or an ideological sense. So, something that you use and you worship. You use it for worship or you actually worship it. Hunter, yeah, leadership, symbolic things. Yes, there's some symbolism behind it, yeah, oftentimes. Good, Hope. Okay, so an image that represents an idea. So actually, symbol, so icon can mean that, but that's actually, I know you're maybe thinking about a visual analysis. So remember, a symbol is an image that represents an idea, right? Um, an icon, some people will say an icon can, but in art history, a symbol is what does that. So don't, it's hard to mix those two things up. So again, yeah, a symbol and an icon, they're related, but they're not, there's a nuance between the two, right? So you can be an icon and a symbol at the same time, but when you say that, you're giving two different meanings to it. Does that make sense? I know it's hard to understand, to wrap your head around it. So yeah, something of significance. Yeah, it can have some symbolism behind it. Yeah, exactly. So in visual analysis, it just means, or in art history, it just means a representation of something's likeness. So it looks like this thing, right? But then it can have symbolism behind it, and then you can talk about it in that way, right? In religious or ideological, it's an object of worship or praise. And in popular culture, which some of us kind of thought about, it's just an important figure or somebody who's like loved and adored, right? Oh, they're such an icon. So what kind of icons, or what are some examples of icons of the Kims that you'll find in North Korea? The lapel pins. Yes, Tyler. Yes, the pins, Claire. The statues. Yes, Mitchell. Yes, Hunter. Yes, Hope. Paintings. Yes, there are paintings of the Kims everywhere, right? And wall photos, Cameron. Yes, exactly. Portraits. Yeah, you might want to say specifically like portraits of the Kims. Right? It's a representation of their likeness. It's an icon in that way, right? Portraits in their homes specifically. Yes, exactly. People have to put a portrait of the Kims. They have to have portraits in their homes. Exactly. So, all these things, which we've talked about. Well, what kind of icons do they think? Ooh, Maddie, yeah, you're bringing in the big word here. Propaganda. We're going to talk about propaganda in a moment. So what kind of icons based on these definitions or these ideas do these count as? What do you think? All of them. All of them. All. Do we all agree? All? Does anyone think just one or two? Yeah, I think tending towards ideological, but definitely I think all of them, right? It's an icon through and through. We can call them icons, right? Exactly. So speaking of visual analysis a little bit here, let's practice describing what you wrote about for your blog. So the first thing when we're practicing the description is we need to get the basics down. So the title, the artist, the years, the location. So does anyone remember? You did not have to know this or memorize this or anything. Gus, you are absolutely correct. You are absolutely correct. So an icon is a direct image of something. It looks like what it represents, right? A symbol does not look like what it represents. So Kim Il-sung, if you put a portrait of Kim Il-sung, it is an icon of him because it looks like him. But it can be a symbol of North Korea or Juche because it doesn't look like North Korea. It doesn't look like Juche. It just represents, symbolically, it represents Juche. So that's how it can be both an icon and a symbol. Does that make more sense? don't get too caught up on that because I promise you, I will never ask you to define the difference between those two things. I will, at most, I'll just comment and say, oh, remember, this is an icon, not a symbol. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. All right. So the basics for this artwork here that we wrote about for our blog. What are the basics? The title, the artists, the years, the location. You don't have to put all of them, but if you're just whatever you can remember. Okay, good. So Monsude, it's actually Hill. It's not, it is, I don't think it's actually an official park, but it's Monsude Hill statue. Okay. What else? Do we at least remember where it is? Like what city it's located in? Because you didn't have to remember the artist. Yeah, Pyongyang. Yeah, exactly. It's in the capital for sure. Good, yeah. So its official title is the Mansudae Grand Monument. Mansudae is the name of a hill that's in the center of Pyongyang. And excellent. Hope even remembers the original year. There's actually 2 years with this one. And then, yeah, so the Matsude Art Studio, who we'll talk about later, they are the artists behind it. So in North Korea, very rarely are you going to see individual artists listed. Usually it's going to be an art studio. Some of the earlier paintings, like in the 50s and 60s, you'll see them as individual artists, but you don't see that very often. So yeah, originally it was 1972. And then in 2012, after the death of Kim Il-sung, or Kim Jong-il, who's right here, they added him to it and they updated. So this is, we'll talk about this in a moment. And they updated this one, right? And it's in Pyongyang, right? So this information, if I give it, if you're on a test or something, I will always give you this information in a caption. But you just have to remember to restate it or include it when you're writing your description, which I'll show you in a moment. All right, so the medium, what's the medium of this? Again, there's multiple answers you could look here. You could use here. There's no one specific answer. Okay, sculpture. Sculpture is a possibility. Yeah, for sure. What else? So yes, it used to be gilded, which means that there was gold foil. So really thin sheets of gold were magnetized onto as Claire points out, bronze. So these are made of bronze, and they used to have gold on top of them. But I believe it was in 77, which Ryan brought up here, they actually removed the gold, right? So it's no longer gilded or it doesn't have gold on it anymore, but it used to have that. But it is bronze, so very good. Metal, you might, if you know what kind of metal it's made out of, you'll want to be more specific for a description. Maricela, yeah, bronze sculpture is totally fine. I think that's like the most accurate term here. So Ian, it's speculated that they needed to sell it for something. They don't have, I mean, North Korea, the government doesn't have very much money, but they do these huge projects all the time. So gold is very expensive. They probably needed it for something else. So, yeah, statue, you can say statue, sculpture, monument, memorial. Those are all fine. Bronze, you definitely want the bronze in there if you know what it's made out of. Mosaic. So this back here, there's something going on in the background here, right? This is actually a mosaic mural. So a mosaic is like tiles, ceramic tiles that are painted and fired, and they're organized in such a way to make it look like a picture like this, right? And you'll see those a lot in public art in North Korea. So, don't forget, in this case, particularly, especially like a monument or memorial, there's multiple parts to it. And this can be part of it here in the background. I'm not sure, Ryan. It might be, but I can't remember if that was it. There's something else that's, I think that's the actual steps up to the monument. Or, oh, yeah, the Juche Tower. Thank you, Cameron. Yeah, that's the Juche Tower. All right, so now let's talk about iconography. So see here we have symbols, icons, and then just general subjects, right? Yeah, so who are the subjects here? Who are the people? the people and the things that have been represented. So the Kims, yeah. So who specifically? Remember to be specific. You need to know their names, especially for this kind of thing. You probably, if you can know their names, you should tell their names. Yes, Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il. Yes, Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il. Does anyone know what the background is depicting? This was one of the mountains you needed to know for your geography test. Yes, Paektu-san or Mount Paektu. Mount Paektu. Exactly, Mount Paektu. Exactly. So that's our, iconography. It can be very expansive or it can be very simple. It depends. Which is, yeah, quote unquote, where Kim Jong-il here is supposedly born. He was not born there. He was actually born in a camp in Russia, but they say he was born in Mount Paektu. Okay, composition. So the order, the perspective, the amounts. Let me see here. So this is where you need to be specific. Which statue is Kim Il-sung? Which is Kim Jong-il? Where is Mount Paektu? Where are Kim Il-sung and Mount Paektu? Right? Where are the things in the artwork? This is what you want to focus on with the composition. So who is on our right? So looking at the monument on our right, looking at the monument on our left. So let's see. So the right is, yes, Kim Jong-il, Kim Jong-il. Yes, on our right. So on the left, who is that? Kim Il-sung. Yes, Kim Il-sung. And we'll discuss how we get to that later. So, and then another thing is the perspective. So as a viewer, how would you engage with this artwork? What would you do? How would you look at it? Bow. Okay, so yes, there's the ritual about it, but so you would bow, but you would look up. Yes, exactly. Look up. Exactly. So how would it feel to look up at this kind of artwork? What do you think? You're very small. Yes, reverent. Very good. You can either use cardinal or relative directions. It's up to you. Just always make sure you obviously state looking at the artwork on the right, or you say, on the west of the west side of the artwork. Yes, grand, momentous, they're giants. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So all of these things are things that you should talk about, right? So it's huge. So remember, this is 22 meters or 72 feet. So they are quite large, right? These are very large statues to interact with. Seem to be towering. Yeah, all of these things I'm seeing are great. Okay, the style. So let's talk about the style. So what are some things about the color, the shape, the lines, the light, the texture? What are some things you would say about that? Again, this could be, let's talk about the statues first. What are some things you would say? So the color is unrealistic, but the proportions are realistic. Yeah, and the poses are very realistic. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. They don't look cheap. Yeah, okay. You might want to be more specific. What makes you say they don't look cheap, right? Good. So they look realistic. Yeah, so what directions are they facing? Yeah, exactly. For composition, yeah, you would want to know that. Let's see. So the clothing is kind of boxy. Yeah, they look very naturalistic. Like the clothes look naturalistic. Very good, Hope. Yeah, so the clothing, when you look at it, it looks like it folds, right? It looks like it actually folds. Yeah, their stances complement each other. Yeah, exactly. So you have one who's looking off into the countryside, right? Into the country as if it's theirs. And then you have him and you have Kim Il-sung doing that, and then Kim Jong-il is following Kim Il-sung's gaze, right? So this is stuff you would probably say in composition or iconography or even in the interpretation. But that's fine. Yes, the colors are very brilliant. Yeah, proud, prominent, grand. Yeah, thank you, Elsa. Very good. So yeah, so there's a lot of different things you could say here. So realistic, it kind of is a bronze brown color, right? It's shiny, it looks smooth, it's bright in the sun, right? Particularly when you see this, it's going to be in the sun probably. So, or it might be a cloudy day, like on the GoPro video if you watch that. And then it's very three-dimensional to define lines. That's that naturalism. I think I'll probably add that word in here. Naturalism of the clothing, right? They both have their the way that they are the clothing is very natural looking. What about the back, the mosaic? What are some things you would say about the colors? Yeah, less naturalistic. Yeah, it doesn't really look like a natural landscape. I would agree with that. But then you might want to explain kind of why. Why would that be? Yes, Claire, there's not as much color, so there's only two colors. There really is like white and gray, and then the background is kind of like orange. Oh, Daphne, muted. Muted is a good way to put it. Yeah, exactly. So they are ceramic, so they're fired. So I'm sure the color that we're seeing is pretty similar. I mean, it is still like a photograph. It's probably pretty similar to what it would look like still. Yeah, Hunter, they're kind of dull. Yeah. Oh, very good, Hunter. And that helps make the statues pop. Yeah, exactly. They kind of quote unquote juxtapose, right? The statues in the background with their kind of more muted background. Hope says, yes, but it still has the defined lines, like Hope says, and pale colors and grays. Yeah. Very good. Yeah, good. I like this. Yes, keeps the attentions on the figures, really complements them. Very good. Yeah, I think I said same thing, like grayscale mountains, their orange red background. Shadow, notice how they use the grayscale to create a sense of depth on the mountains. And they try and evoke something called linear perspective here. You don't need to use that word necessarily, but notice how there's a sense of depth in the way that they portrayed the mountains, right? You can see the mountains that are supposed to be closer look larger, and in the background, they look smaller, right? So that's linear perspective. Well, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's as much as you need to know. Good. So all of this is what you will do when you go to write a description. I have this example here. I'm not going to read it for you, but you can look at the slides later for help. You would put all of this into a paragraph, basically, or at least a good bit of it. So you can look at this on your own time. It'll be available to you. So let's practice our interpretation now. So interpretation, I am always going to give you a specific question or two that you should answer for your interpretation. So that's after your description, right? Now you need to make meaning out of it. So what does it mean? What is its significance? So the question I'll ask you is, what kind of image of the Kims does the Montserrat Grand Monument portray? So how do the Kims appear? What do they seem like based on this image? What do you think? How would you describe the Kims? Like, what would you say about them? Kyle, they're confident and in control. Yes, exactly. Tyler, they look powerful, kind, and proud. Absolutely. Alpha, grand. Yes, grand. They look grand. Fatima, yes, they look like they're the most important. They should be worshipped. Yes. Hunter, they look in charge. Jimin, they look like they're discussing important state matters. Yes, for sure. You could say that. Yes, it makes them look like the most important. They look happy. Thank you, Miranda. Yes, this is very basic, but it's important. They look very happy. They look happy, yes, which will come into play here, right? Divine, Elsa says. Yes, they could seem divine, right? Maybe otherworldly, right? Their friendly expression here, Ian, very good. Gus says larger than life. Yes, larger than life. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Yeah, kind of moving on. So what you always have to remember to include, and I may not on the question, I may not remind you, but you need to explain why you think that they look this way. So you need your evidence, your visual evidence particularly. So what do you see that makes you say that they look grand, or that they look happy, or that they look like they're in charge, or that they look like they're doing they're working on state affairs? What do you see that makes you think that? And I know it sounds basic, but it's important to clarify that, right? It's not always that this is just happens to be pretty easy, I think, personally. What do you see that makes you say that? Exactly. So you have to go back into your description. Like Alpha says, as said before, Alpha says, yes, you will have probably said this before, but now you have to go back, you have to pull it out, and you have to indicate to me what the significance of that is. Exactly. So you're going to feel like maybe you're repeating yourself, but that's your evidence, right? So when people have to bow and look up at it, it gives you that feeling like it's larger than life, it's grand, right? Claire, yeah, the sizes, their stances, the smile, so on, right? The landscape. They're so prominent and larger. And then even with the backgrounds, that's very important here. Maddie says they're even taller than the actual depiction of the mountains. Exactly. They're bigger than the mountains. Um, let's see what else. Yeah, their size. Gus says, so Kim Il-sung is extending his right hand outward. Right, yeah. He's facing away from Mount Pektu. He's kind of like, exactly, you can interpret that as him declaring dominion. I like that. From atop its peak. Very good. That's a really great way to phrase your interpretation of why he looks the way he looks, right? Yeah, they're huge in the authority. Yeah, good. Okay. Good. I think we got it, right? And then why? So now we have to go back and think about the text. Why would it be important for the Kims to appear this way? What do you think? To legitimize them. Yeah, exactly. Well, why do they need to be legitimized? Very good. Yeah. What did we read? I mean, you don't have to quote anybody or paraphrase anybody right now, but basically, what's the reason according to the readings? Yeah. They're viewed as the grand leaders, and this kind of they need to be keep that image up to stay in control. Exactly. Exactly, Kelly. They want to be seen as big and strong because they want to maintain the leaders. Yes, and Hunter, the monarchy of the Kims, if you want to call it that, that's fine. The Kim regime is based, there's a lot of worshiping them. You want to be able to get the people to worship you. Right, exactly. Fatima, yeah, they're the faces of North Korea, right? Exactly. Daphne, yeah, they want to give some kind of physical manifestation of how powerful the Kims truly are, right? Yeah, exactly. All of these things are great. Yeah. So good. So again, putting this all together, you'll have some kind of paragraph like this. And there's a lot of different ways you can take it with an interpretation. There's no right or wrong way, as long as you're following the question and you have evidence for your answer, right? Good. So I believe it was Maddie said it a while ago that it's kind of like propaganda, right? So I ended my interpretation to segue into talking about propaganda here. The monument can be labeled propaganda, right? It's kind of like propaganda. So what is propaganda art specifically? So this is a little bit of a nuance. There's a little bit of a nuance to how we're going to talk about this. So in the case of art, propaganda can be vaguely defined as something that promotes the viewer to either believe something or to do something. More specifically, propaganda art has a call to action that can be understood by looking at it. This is usually, but not necessarily always, achieved by misrepresenting the subject of the artwork. And in North Korea, the regime ensures propaganda is everywhere by controlling all media, all art-making activities, and all aspects of education. So in North Korea, all news is carefully skewed to match the government's interests. And people in North Korea, especially the Donju, they do have computers and they even have cell phones. However, they do not have any legal connection to the internet. Instead, they only have a legal connection to the North Korean intranet. So it's just a North Korean intranet is what they legally have connection to. But who is the focus? Well, of course, I'm going to kind of move along here. It's Kim Jong-un and family currently. And who are the bad guys? Now, who are the bad guys? We haven't talked about this too much yet. Who are the bad guys in North Korea and North Korean news and media? So the West, yeah. So the US, particularly the United States. Yeah, the United States and South Korea is too, and also Japan sometimes. Yeah, exactly. Um, so the US, South Korea, and Japan all get kind of mixed up as the capitalist states. So the capitalists, they don't usually point out, they never pinpoint specific people. It's usually just countries. So they never say like, somebody like Elon Musk is terrible, right? They never say that. They just say the US is bad for some reason, right? And you can look at, I wanted to include this here. If you want to go look at what North Korean media is like, you are welcome to do that on your own time. I do not condone any information coming from it, but in the United States, you can access this. In South Korea, you cannot, but it's called the Rodong News. You just search it, RODONG, and you can look at what it's like. So we're just going to practice some of our interpretation here. We're not worried about describing so much, but this artwork is kind of a basic. So this is called "We Cannot Allow the Use of Nuclear Weapons" by the US imperialists. It's a hand-painted poster of an unknown date, and it's from North Korea. So the title is what the text says. So we're not going to dig deep into describing it, but what do you think? Off the bat, is this propaganda? What do we think? Is this propaganda? Yes, 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 yes. Okay, I'm assuming we're all going to say yes, right? So now here's the hard part. Why? And what I want you to focus on is, what is the call to action? What do you think? Okay, deterrence. Yeah, so we want to deter or stop. We want to stop the US, right? What else? Anything else? Okay, yeah, so it wants people to be scared. It wants them to believe that the US is scary, right? Yeah, it wants them to believe that the US is scary. Oh, well, we'll talk about that in just a moment, Kyle. Yes, exactly, Truman. Stop, right? It's kind of like just the stop it. We need to stop them, right? It's pretty, from the text, we can kind of get that. It's all about stopping. And yes, Ian, so from context, then we can extrapolate, oh, North Korea wants to develop its nuclear weapons, so they would, of course, want to stop the US by doing so. Yes, Elsa, this is a great way. You should be scared of the US. I mean, it's as simple as that, right? That is kind of a call to action, a call to belief in a way as well. Now, not only the text, but what do we see? So this is the hard part, and this is why you would need to use your description here. What do we see in the imagery that suggests that the call to action is be scared of the US, we need nuclear weapons, stop the US? What do you see? Great, Gus, this is great. Nuclear missile. Notice where the nuclear missile is. It's between North Korea over here and the US, like a barrier. Very good use of a simile here for your description, which, yeah, pretty literally is equating nuclear weapons as like the wall that is inhibiting the two countries, right? Exactly. Very good, Claire. Yeah, it shows them on just opposite sides of the ocean, right? And they're very much in reach of each other, right? Exactly, Callie. So notice the Korean Peninsula is highlighted in red, which brings our attention to it very, very obviously. Great, Daphne. Yeah, it's the hand here is like stop, right? So the hand is kind of like somebody putting their palm out to stop the missile. So Kyle asked the question, why is it not a US American flag on the sleeve? What kind of, based on this color scheme or based on what you see here, what kind of hand do you think it is? And based on the context of this. Yeah. Maybe a Humboldt. Yeah, we're not going to learn about Humboldt. But yeah, if this color scheme, it kind of looks like a modern Korean style dress that's called hanbok. And this color scheme is very common. Yeah, so that's why this is used here. It's supposed to look familiar to people who wear Korean style clothing. Yeah. Yes, great. So good. Let's see. Let me see if I just see really quick if I see anything else. So hand stopping. Good. Yes. Boundary. Good. Yes. Oh, very good, Ryan. So the black silhouette. So this is kind of like this, the missile is, not detailed realistically. It's just black, right? So that kind of adds to the kind of eeriness of it, right? You can't really tell what it looks like, it's just kind of this black figure in the middle between the US and the Korean Peninsula. Great. Yeah, and it's very large. Very good, Ian. Yeah, both the hand and the nuclear missile, they're very large. So they're really showing you the kind of power of both of these two agents in the image. So the colors do not necessarily represent social classes. I mean, maybe, if you want to find some textual evidence to talk about color significance in North Korea, I've never heard that. But Tyler says it could look like a child's hand. I've had many students say that. Now, there's, you can definitely argue that. It's possible. We don't know, but I think it's possible for sure. So, nuclear weapons in North Korea. So one of the main issues with North Korea on the global stage is that North Korea continually threatens South Korea and Japan with nuclear weapons. So last week, Kim Jong-un proclaimed that North Korea is preparing for war. Did you hear that? Hear about that? He also declared that North Korea's policy is no longer to seek reunification of the peninsula and that they have underwater drones that carry nuclear missiles. So these stories are all over North American news outlets and are the major contributor to the stereotype of North Korea as a warmongering, violent country, which that's not necessarily incorrect, but there is a bit more of a nuance to it. So in the reading by Andrei Lankov, he talked about the nuclear blackmail campaign. So first, North Korea uses nuclear weapons to threaten to make threats and heighten tensions. And then this makes the US and other powers call for negotiations with North Korea to prevent nuclear warfare, of course. And then North Korea ends up wringing some kind of aid out of the nations, which then helps them until they encounter a new crisis and repeat, right? So, however, it is true that recently North Korea's nuclear tests have increased significantly, and their end game kind of remains unclear, and the exact crisis that North Korea is facing is also unclear. So, but my kind of soapbox here to you, which is what every instructor should say about anything, is instead of freaking out every time that you hear that North Korea is doing something, because you're going to always be hearing that North Korea is doing something that's scary, right? So be sure to read up and get the details. All right. So about 15 minutes. Hopefully we can get through those. So the life of a North Korean artist. So we're going to segue here. So because the North Korean government controls all aspects of education, becoming an artist in North Korea follows a strict state-sanctioned process. Not just anyone can become an artist, and if you are an artist, you belong to and make art for the state, not for your individual expression. So first, you need to be accepted to the Pyongyang University of Fine Art, and you usually major in one medium, and you learn how to use that medium to express the ideals of the state. Then you will be given employment at a state-run artist studio, and for the rest of your career, you will try to earn different levels of merit, which allow you different freedoms depending on which rank you have. So People's Artist is a pretty good rank, and it means that you're able to do portraits of the Kims. And then if you have Merit Artist, that's the highest honor, and it means you have a little bit more freedom in what subject matter you're allowed to depict, but it still has to be like within the realms of the propagandistic subjects and genres, right? So all the artworks, the two that we've looked at so far, they're both made, are part of the Monsudae Art Studio. which is it's really the main art studio in North Korea. And this is a gallery at the Monsudae Art Studio. What do you notice about this gallery? It was very organized. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Hope, yeah. There's a lot of green. There's a lot of depictions of nature. Yeah, plants. I agree. I think it's very crowded. I think this is actually a gallery where they sell things to like maybe the Tonju or maybe some middle class people. Um, so yeah, Maddie, it's not very grand. Yeah. Yeah, Claire and Jimin. Claire says, excuse me, there's a lot of similar subjects or similarity in art. But what do you notice? Does any of this art look very propagandistic? What do you think compared to what we've looked at so far? No, right? Yeah, it's very kind of just quote unquote art for art's sake, right? It just looks nice, maybe. I mean, we would have to go through each and every little painting to really dig into what's going on there. Yeah, Callie, I like that. It looks like it's more for just joy, right? I mean, we have these embroideries here. There's ceramics over here to the left. There's some sculptures here that look like they're in shapes of animals. So, there is a diversity. There's not just propaganda art that's being made for the studio, but then what they do make that's kind of for art's sake or for joy is very uh it's very diluted still, right? It's still very much just there's not a lot of meaning to necessarily get from it except that it looks nice, right? Right, Maddie. It's not as interpretive. I like that. It's not as interpretive, right? Yeah, it looks like a lot of old antiques. Yeah, it looks like antique kind of inspired stuff, Gus. Yeah. Yeah, they're like doilies, Ryan. I don't know. Oops, sorry. So, um, if you become an artist in North Korea, the main kind of genre that you're going to learn is the original kind of state-sanctioned art in North Korea, which is called socialist realism. So this is the origins of the propaganda in North Korea. And it is a genre. Oh, wait, it's not click. There we go. It's a genre of fine art, particularly fine art. So it's not limited to any medium. It can be painting, sculpture, film. And this term was coined in the Soviet Union in the 1930s as a means to explain how art should serve the revolution, especially the ongoing socialist revolution, right? So because it is not limited to any medium, it's primarily defined by its style and its content. So it looks realistic in style, but in content, it's not necessarily true, right? It's just idealized, and therefore it's propagandistic in nature. And looking at this, and based on what you read in the article by Hong, oh, I thought this. What's the iconography or that kind of content that's common in socialist realism, which you can definitely get from this this painting here. Labor, yeah. Devoted workers, yes. People working together, yes, that's very important. There are singular workers who are depicted in this genre, but oftentimes it's a groups, right? The working class, yeah, exactly. So they're the iconographic focus. So they're the icons, they're the subjects of these kinds of artworks. And yeah, the proletariat class. It's this callback to proletariat class solidarity. Very good. And the point is that the symbolism behind these icons is that they are promoting the revolution, right? So the kind of call to action is they're working hard, so you should work hard for the revolution too, right? That's kind of the call to action. So we're just going to work on describing socialist realism or realism in general. So what is the medium of this artwork? So see here, I have a caption, and I've given you a lot of the basics. here already. But what's this medium? Good. Oil on canvas or oil painting. Yes, exactly. Realism, especially socialist realism, is primarily oil on canvas or oil paintings. Exactly, yeah. So oil painting, you'll see that more. So what about the style? So how would you describe things like the colors, the textures? If we were able to see this, we would get close to it and we would look at the brush strokes. Unfortunately, we can't do that. The overall, how it looks, right? What would you say? Maddie, very realistic. Absolutely. That is the most important thing here, right? When I look at this painting as a person, I can tell exactly what it's supposed to be, right? It's realistic. I can understand that it's a scene and I can individually pick out because it looks realistic who these people are. Exactly. Good. Dark colors, yes. In this case, it's very darkened. We have a lot of and Claire puts it very well, dramatic lighting, yes. Or Ian, high contrast lighting. That's very important. Those are all great ways to describe it. Yes, lots of contrast, exactly, Elsa. So there's lots of contrast between these dark kind of black or brown colors and these reddish colors, right? So you don't need to memorize this word, but it can be helpful for you. It is an Italian word meaning light and dark, and it's pronounced chiaroscuro, chiaroscuro. So you see in socialist realism and realism in general, a lot of these huge contrasts in light and dark, which makes it kind of feel what? What does it help do? Exactly. Make it dramatic, make drama. Well, it makes it feel like there's more depth. And if it looks more depth, if there's more depth to it, it can look more real, right? It doesn't look flat. It makes it look, oh yeah, active, Callie. I like that word too, active. It makes it feel more active. Like you can kind of draw, you can kind of, yes, exactly. You can kind of draw yourself into the painting a little bit. Yes, exactly. Okay, the composition. What do you notice about the composition? So, where are things in this image? We've already talked about the iconography, so that's why I kind of left that one out. We know there's workers in the image. It's layered. Yeah, there's a clear foreground and a clear background, right? And hope. Perfect. The figures are in the foreground. We can see them, right? They are, I wrote here, they're close up. They are focused. Maddie, that's great too. They're centralized in this image. When I look at this, I know that I am intended to focus on these couple of guys here in the front and what they are doing, right? They are the main focus. Yeah, exactly, in the composition. And then, yeah, iconography, workers working hard despite the danger. Okay, so then we also have images like this. So we have images like this. So there's workers. Obviously, there's workers in this image, but who is this in the center here? Yes, he has a halo. Kim Il-sung. Yes, Kim Il-sung. So what do you think? Is this socialist realism? The very center is Kim Il-sung. Is this socialist realism? Yes, yes, yes. Does anyone think it's not socialist realism? This word was thrown around I think it was thrown around at the end of the article. Maybe you picked up on it, maybe you didn't. So, yes, Ryan, I think you picked up on it. Yeah, so a lot of people, a lot of art historians, when we talk about North Korean art, especially after the 70s, we call it Juche realism. Because the Kims are the focus, right? So we move on from the workers being the focus. The workers are still important here, but if you look at this image, and we're not going to dive deep into it, the center, right, is Kim Il-sung, right? So, you can call it socialist realism, but you're going to see this term too, or if you want to sound smart talking to somebody about North Korean art, Juche realism is the word that is the genre that people talk about, right? Good. Yes, hold on. sorry, just reading the comments here. Good. All right. So I know there's a lot on this slide, but I'm just going to explain to you. So this is your after class assignment. So what you need to do is you need to read this prompt, which I'm going to tell you briefly about. And in a Word doc, or if you use Mac or iOS or whatever, convert it to a PDF, please. You need to respond to this prompt and you need to submit it on Canvas by Friday at 11:59 p.m. Responses should be about 250 words. So choose one of the 3 artworks we discussed in class, but not too in-depth, but just a little bit. So you can use the poster we talked about, you can use the oil painting, or you can even talk about this right here, which everything is listed here about what it is. It's a mosaic in the subway, so it's those ceramic tiles. So what you want to do is conduct a visual analysis of the artwork, describe and interpret with evidence. So you need to have a paragraph that's describing it, a paragraph really is what you should have. And you need to have a paragraph that's interpreting it. And in your interpretation, you need to answer the following questions. Does this artwork qualify as propaganda? Why or why not? So that's where you need to give your visual evidence. What is its call to action and how do you know based on what you see and read? So you need to include 1 citation, so just in parentheses, to either of this week's readings. So it can be Lankov or Hong, either of the 2. It needs to be the reading, not the video. I prefer you dig back into the reading for this. So the images are all available on Canvas under the plenary response assignment. So this is how you'll be graded. So you'll be given 4 points for your answer being relevant to the prompt. You get 3 points just for including a citation or the parentheticals to something from class. You can paraphrase the information or you can quote the information. Either way is fine with me. And then your writing quality. I need to be able to tell that you put effort into this. Okay. Yes, the slides, I will post them after class here. Good. All right. So it is just now 7:15. If you have questions, you can ask me here in the chat or stay and ask me verbally. Questions about North Korea or about the assignments. All of this will be posted right after class on Canvas. There's the portal, or there's the plenary response assignment that you can click on and see everything. So thank you all so much. You're totally dismissed. Good job today. Sorry. But yes, this should be an essay, not bulleted. I should have said that first. This should be an essay. All right. Stop sharing.